Class is in session. College football hitting the book show Monday, December 1st. Conference Championship preview edition of the College Football Hitting the Book show. Ian Cameron, Connor Mack with you. The regular season is over, and we have 9 conference championship games that we will preview in just a moment. The regular season winds down, but not without some chaos in the college football ranks, as we saw some crazy finishes. We saw some thrilling conclusions. The Iron Bowl came down to the wire. Oklahoma surviving a scare against LSU to keep their playoff hopes alive. We saw Notre Dame thump Stanford in the late night hours. We saw a lot of interesting results over the course of the weekend. We obviously saw Georgia take care of business against Georgia Tech. The headline story that's taken over college football, of course, is Lane Kiffin and leaving for LSU. They're in the middle of a, best season in Ole Miss recent history, likely a college football playoff-bound season for Ole Miss. But nope, he won't be around to coach the team. He's off to LSU, and it's apparently Lane Kiffin's college football world, and we're just minions in it. And I think he loves every second of this. The attention around him, all the hype, all the coverage that Lane Kiffin's decision has gotten over the last week. I think he loves it. He absolutely soaks it up and just lives for every second of it. But I don't like the way it was handled. I don't like that he took forever, to finally announce that or make the decision that he's going to go. He probably made it a while ago. Just took him a while to finally make it official. It is a good hire because, look, say what you will about how sometimes quirky he can be, and he's a social media monger. He's always on there tweeting left and right. He's always got these funny quotes, and he's trying to sound clever all the time in interviews and in the post game and all that. And he's kind of a me guy, but he is a damn good football coach. We do have to remember that. And LSU probably is getting a good coach, but I feel for the Ole Miss players, for the organization, and I salute Keith Carter, the AD at Ole Miss, who said, none of this nonsense where you're going to stick around, coach our guys in the playoff when you're going to be taking a bunch of your offensive coaching staff. And it was mostly coaches on the offensive side, including offensive coordinators, that went with Lane Kiffin to LSU. Why would he allow that? You're either committed to Ole Miss and finishing out the season and trying to coach us to a national championship game, or you're with a rival, another SEC school. Why the hell would he allow him to stay around and coach this damn team when he's leaving for another SEC school? So I applaud the AD for Ole Miss for standing his ground, digging in his heels, and saying, we're not dealing with this nonsense. You want to leave? There's the door. So well done there. But Connor Mack, like I said, I'm glad it's done, because the next time I see Marty Smith waiting for a scoop on Lane Kiffin or waiting to do an interview with him is going to be too soon.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. It's just the money talks, I think. You can't even wait to finish this year out. You know what I mean? It's just, you got to go. And I don't know. I think he's an all right football coach. That I don't know. Yeah, and he does love social media. This guy, he's looking at the lines.
Good coach. He still has not won the big one. He still has not won.
No, hell no.
Championship type.
You remember Tennessee? Do you remember USC?
Yeah.
I mean, these places. So good luck at LSU.
Why I say he's a good coach is because he can take you from the bottom and get you, near the top. He can get you, really good. He can get you in a position where you're one of the better teams in the conference, as Ole Miss currently is, from, nothing. Because he has done that before where he's been. But you're right. As far as hardware, trophies, championships, there's still not much there on the Lane Kiffin cupboard right now, as far as, a lot of championship success. So, again, considering Brian Kelly was the last coach, it's an upgrade, because Brian Kelly was a disaster. Anyone would be an upgrade from Brian Kelly. So LSU got a good hire, but I just don't like how it was handled. I feel bad for the kids who poured in a great season, still have a chance to get to be in the playoff and compete for a national championship. And now you've had everything uprooted. Your head coach is gone. A lot of his offensive coaches on that staff are gone. And like I said, it's just, and now you wonder, we'll get into this more because Ole Miss is obviously not playing this week on Conference Championship Week. We'll get into this more when we talk about the playoff games later in this month on this show. But how it impacts the preparation for Ole Miss going into whatever playoff game they have coming up. It'll be interesting to see what kind of, disruption this whole Lane Kiffin saga has, what it causes for Ole Miss as they try to get ready for this playoff. Does it affect them or does it not affect them?
We'll get to it in a later game.
Yeah.
North Texas Tulane, with the guy who's staying, not going.
Point. Yes.
A little bit different. And how do they react to that? Like, hey, you're staying for this. I don't know, but we know you're heading off to better. You're out of here. To Florida.
Well, exactly. It's just, we'll get to that for sure with Mr. Sumrall there with Tulane. John Sumrall hired, of course, over the weekend as Florida Gators head coach, but he will stick around to coach Tulane for the rest of the season, including the AAC championship game, which is a de facto, ticket to the college football playoff in all likelihood between North Texas and Tulane on Friday in that AAC championship game. So we'll get to that in a moment. Let's get into it. We got 9 games, and we will begin with, there's a bunch of games on Friday. They've changed the schedule. Usually you get 1, maybe 2 games on Friday, everything else on Saturday, conference championship week. But no, this is the first of 4 games on Friday taking place. So 4 of the 9 conference championship games are on Friday night. This is definitely a first. No question about that. So a lot more balance. It was two last year on a Friday, and then the other 7 would be on Saturday. This year we got 4 on Friday night, 5 on Saturday. So it's a lot more balanced.
I like it.
As far as the schedule for the conference championship weekend. We'll begin in Conference USA. Kennesaw State, Jacksonville State. We've got Kennesaw State 1.5-point favorites, 59.5 the total in this game. This game taking place at on campus, Jacksonville State's home field. So this is essentially a home game here for Jacksonville State. That's the way it always goes with Conference USA. They do not play their title game on a neutral field. So I do want to point out before I get to what I like in this game, and I'm focusing more on the total, there is a 78% chance of rain Friday night here in Jacksonville, Alabama. Only 5 miles per hour, though, as far as the wind. So it looks like it's only going to be, rain that could be an impact as far as weather is concerned here in this game. I don't know if even 75% chance of rain is going to keep this game under the total, because these two teams, they're not stopping anybody. Their defenses have been gashed repeatedly. We'll throw out what the Kennesaw State Owls have done defensively. They just played a 90-point shootout last weekend with Liberty and survived it 48-42. 75 points the week before in their game against Missouri State, which was up and down the field, 41-34. The regular season game against Jacksonville State, which they lost 35-26, which is why Jacksonville State has home field for this Conference USA title game, 61 points. That game also went over the total. Jacksonville State's going to run the football 90% of the time. We know that. It was like that with Rich Rod. It's like that now as well. The system really hasn't, the scheme on offense hasn't changed. They're 4th in the country in rush attempts per game, 123rd in the country in pass attempts per game. It's going to be run heavy. Well, Kennesaw State's given up 172.6 per game on the ground rushing, 4.4 yards per carry. Those are ranked 101 and 82nd in the country. So their run defense is not very good, Kennesaw. So you got to think Jacksonville State's going to move the football. And that Caden Creel, quarterback for Jacksonville State, he's got a motor to him. That guy can run. Holy mackerel. A very good running quarterback here, Caden Creel. So you got to think there's going to be success on the ground for Jacksonville State. I'm impressed with Kennesaw offensively. They are a real big play, explosive offense. There's going to be instances where they're not a team that matriculates the ball down the field. It's like they'll get 2 yards, they'll get 4 yards, and then bam, 68-yard touchdown. That's kind of the way it's been with Kennesaw State this season. They're kind of a big play, quick strike offense. They did have their quarterback missing early in the season, Odom, but he is back here late in the season, and he's given this Kennesaw State attack even more punch. So, and Jacksonville State's defensive numbers aren't very good. So there's a reason this total's already gone up. It opened 56.5, 57. I'm now seeing 59.5. I agree wholeheartedly. It's over or pass for me. The only concern is we do have that rain in the forecast. I don't know if it's really going to – it's just the one concern would be because Jacksonville State's so run-heavy, is the field going to be messed up and in bad condition because of the rain? That's the one thing that we're concerned about, but it's certainly an over matchup here on paper. As far as the side goes here in this game, C-Mac, I kind of think Kennesaw might avenge that loss, even though they're on the road here. I mean,
this line's flipped, right? From last night. A little bit.
Yeah.
Kennesaw's favorite now.
Flip of favorites because Jacksonville State was 1.5. Kennesaw State is now 1.5 point favorites. The revenge factors in mind here, where Kennesaw lost the first game between these two teams. And it's worth noting, Jacksonville State had 451 yards. Kennesaw State had almost 600 total yards in that first meeting against Jacksonville State. They outgained Jacksonville State.
Turnovers.
Probably could have easily won that football game if not for Jacksonville State just did the finishing drives, were an issue at times there for Kennesaw in that game against Jacksonville State. I think they had a couple of turnovers as well, which flipped the field as well. I'm just looking at the numbers there. Yeah, Odom had 3 interceptions. You take away those 3 interceptions from the quarterback, Amari Odom, and it could have been a different result for Kennesaw. So I think there's a reason there has been a change of favorites here. Kennesaw might get him back here in this game, even though it's at Jacksonville State, home field of the Gamecocks. I lean Kennesaw, and I'm definitely liking the over as long as the rain's not too big of an issue. This is one where you want to maybe wait closer to Friday night, see if the forecast changes. We've been there a million times, C-Mac, with these weather forecasts on a Monday, where it looks like it's going to be bad, and it clears right up, 24 hours before kickoff, and there's going to be no rain. So I'm hoping for that because this definitely screams over as far as the matchup. C-Mac, what do you think here? CUSA title game.
Man, you're hitting on a lot. How do they get stops? After just seeing it, 3 weeks ago in this game. And it's the classic they lost, but they're back on the road there. That's the only thing. If this was a neutral or Kennesaw's at home, I think, you'd really like that. But a team loses to him with such a bad game. That was Odom's worst game. I mean, no touchdowns. He had 3 picks. But both these teams, Kennesaw should be able to throw it, even run it a little bit. But I don't know how Kennesaw stops Jacksonville State from running the football here, at all in this game. So that's, when I was going through this, I got to think if Kennesaw State gets up. Jacksonville State, by the way, best bet winner, still undefeated at home. I don't know if many people really want to go against them.
I was locked into that game. That was a hell of a football.
That was a great game. That was
Jacksonville State. ESPN Plus. You got to go down the dial to find it, but it was there, and
it was there.
Great game.
You know what? I hit live too in that game just because I thought they would bring that game at least to the wire. When they go up 7-0, they give up 3 straight touchdowns and kind of need to get everything regroup a little bit. I took them over 10.5 live too. That's something maybe in this game to take Jacksonville. Like Kennesaw scores a little bit or a couple, back-to-back scores, and you can get this team.
They're fast starters, Kennesaw. So many games they've gotten. They've gotten off to strong starts. So if you like Jacksonville State, it might be worth your while to wait. See if they fall behind early. Yep, great point.
Yeah, Kennesaw, that offense has even been pretty good on the road. And we bet we could go off with all these teams, of course, play all the same teams here. You know what I mean? In this conference. So this one should be fun. And I don't know. Of course, it always comes. You talked about the weather, conference championship game, everything. You just saw a team. Maybe there's a little bit better defense. But if on paper, how do you not think there's at least points here? This was 56.5 that game 3 weeks ago. And it's just, it's up a point now. So, yeah, that total, I'm going to sit with it for a little bit.
That was an over last year in the Conference USA Championship game. It was 52-12 for Jacksonville State over Western Kentucky, and it went over 59.5. Mostly due to Jacksonville State, who just scored on almost every possession of that game against Western Kentucky. And yes, Jacksonville State's win over Western Kentucky Saturday is why they're here in this game instead of Western Kentucky. That was basically a game to get into the Conference USA Championship game, Jacksonville and Western Kentucky last weekend. And I had the over. It couldn't have been any easier.
Yeah. The recipe's bad. Kennesaw, as good as they could move the football, they can't stop the run.
Yes.
They gave up 170. I just don't know how Jacksonville State doesn't get its normal 250 to 300 yards in this game.
Yeah, if you can't stop the run against Jacksonville State, as we've said all year, that's a problem. And it could be a problem again on Friday night for them. All right, Sun Belt Championship. We've got Troy and James Madison. James Madison, 22.5-point home favorites, 47 the total. How about those Troy Trojans? And how about a salute to Gerard Parker, head coach, who has taken – Troy was not expected to be – people thought for Gerard Parker is going to take some time, to get the program back up to speed. But what a performance. Outright win as underdogs against Southern Miss, which knocks Southern Miss out of this Sun Belt Championship game and puts Troy in to this Sun Belt Championship game with that victory over Southern Miss last weekend. Goose Crowder, of course, the quarterback being back has certainly helped. He was, I thought, fantastic against Southern Miss. 24 for 34, 285 passing, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception in that 28-18 win over Southern Miss to get them to this championship game. We'll see if he's able to duplicate that kind of success here against a James Madison team that's just what they're doing right now to teams in this conference is it's belt to ass every single week for James Madison right now against opposing teams. Now, these two teams have not faced each other this season. So this is the first time we're seeing Troy and James Madison go head-to-head. Troy, you look at the finish for Troy down the stretch. They beat Georgia State by 12. They beat Southern Miss outright, 28-18. I don't know what to make. Here's the thing. Troy's got some serious momentum on their side right now. There's no denying that whatsoever here in this game. But Georgia State stinks. I'm convinced Southern Miss because that's the concern with Southern Miss and what they did and how they handled things. Charles Huff down the stretch, their head coach. They knew they only had to win their final game of the season to get into the Sun Belt Championship game, and they almost took the last 2 weeks off before playing Troy. They rested players. They didn't have their heads in it, and they lose those 2 games back-to-back to Texas State and South Alabama. And then it's almost like they couldn't flip the switch, Southern Miss, last week for that game against Troy. When you've been just kind of taking it easy and, playing for just this one game. And I think it bit them. It bit them in the ass, Southern Miss. You had chances against Texas State. You had chances against South Alabama to nail down the spot in the Sun Belt Championship game, and you were too casual. Yeah, and you just said, we got the last game against Troy, and as long as we win that, we're fine. Well, you lost it, and now you're out. So, like I said, didn't exactly handle it all that well, Southern Miss. I worry about Troy in this matchup, and quite frankly, I have no interest in betting against James Madison right now, and I'll tell you why. Because James Madison right now is looking for style points. They're looking to run it up. They're looking for a margin every time they take the field. And now that we have ourselves a Duke, Virginia ACC championship game on Saturday, we have a scenario where if Duke were to beat Virginia in the ACC championship game, Duke's still not going to the playoff, quite possibly, even if they win that game. That would open the door for a higher-ranked automatic qualifier conference champion to make the playoff instead of an ACC champion, and that would open the door to a team like James Madison to be in the playoff. So from that standpoint, James Madison's got an opening now to make the playoff, and certainly a reason and incentive to run it up. The counter to that is we've just heard earlier today that Bob Chesney, the great head coach of James Madison, has been hired as the new head coach of the UCLA Bruins. What does that play into this game? Is he sticking around to coach this Sun Belt title game? I would think so.
Yeah, I think he's staying.
I think because they know that they could still make the playoff, but still, it's a little bit of a distraction that you don't really need the week leading in. So this is one of those games where I know for a fact I have no interest in betting against James Madison, but it's a lot of points. It's a situation where there's a lot of moving parts going around to this game. I did bet. The one thing I did bet was James Madison team total over. I got on that CMAC at 34.5. Below a key number. Yeah,
that's what's out there. Yeah.
Below a key number of 35 in this game. I jumped on it early because that's the better bet to me. If James Madison's going to cover 22.5 points, they're going to score 35 or more, in my opinion. I think it's a pretty good.
You think so, right?
Yeah. So I would rather have that in pocket, and I figure this number might go up here as well in this game as far as the team total. So that's definitely something. And the Troy run defense is what I'm targeting here, because even though we've seen this team obviously step up in the last couple weeks, they haven't seen anything to the regards of a rushing attack that James Madison's going to throw at them. James Madison's elite running the football, and unfortunately for Troy, they're giving up 170.7 rushing yards per game and a 4.5 yards per carry clip. So, nearly 5 yards per carry on average for Troy, allowing that on the ground. That is not, just like we talked about with the last game, that's not what you want against this kind of offense. So run heavy and so good at it, like James Madison. So I do have James Madison over 34.5. That's the only bet I've placed in this game so far. I prefer that than laying the 22.5. That's for sure. C-Mac, what do you think here? Sun Belt Championship.
Yeah, this is another one, with the coach going but staying for this game. I mean, it's hard to not look at James Madison. I mean, and everything, the stats are just better. This is the way better defense. This is the offense is way better. At Troy, this team's been able to get it done against lower teams. And then they have, they beat Texas State, last week. They win. I think they won at Buffalo earlier in the year. Yeah.
They did.
21-17. Yeah. So they've been pretty good on the road. But I can't trust them here. I had them last week.
Should point out the next toughest, best team they've played on the road in the Sun Belt that comes anywhere.
Yeah, it was Old Dominion. Then they got
Old Dominion. They got shut out 33. And Goose was playing. Goose was back for that game as well, and he started at quarterback, and he couldn't get anything going offensively. So,
yeah,
be aware of that.
I mean, that was a disaster. They had missed field goals. I think they fumbled the ball like 5 times. They only lost it a couple, just turnovers, interceptions. They couldn't get anything going here. Yeah, I don't mind the team total. The whole coach leaving. They've been dominant at home. Yeah. Everything points to just be a slam dunk for JMU.
Throw out the Washington State game, because that was not a Sun Belt Conference game. Every other recent game for James Madison: 63 against Old Dominion, 52 against Texas State, 35 against Marshall, 58 against App State, 59 against Coastal Carolina. They've just laid absolute waste, to every defense they've played in this conference. But 35 is the fewest points they've scored, and that was against Marshall. 35, and 35 gets you a winner here with the team total. So that's why when I saw that 34.5, my eyes lit up. I'm like, I got to jump on that, because I don't think it's going to be around later in the week.
Yeah, I mean, can Troy score here? Their team total's 12.5. I mean, they've had a few games this year. Of course, Washington State better. We talked about that game. 2 touchdown favorites. But ULL, they were big favorites here at home. 24-14. Every once in a while, I know they beat up on the weak, but they can that offense in a few of these games. What was the game earlier too? Georgia State, or I think they had one other game where they didn't score a ton. Because usually they're just slaughtering these horrible teams.
Yeah, Georgia State for James Madison. It was way back early October. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I like to play. So.
Yep, and they had a couple of games early in conference play. The Georgia State and Louisiana, the Cajuns, where they only scored 14 and 24. But from that moment on, I mean, boy, oh boy, it's like they just kicked it into another gear. Barnett, they have a package they run sometimes with Sluka, the former UNLV quarterback in that game. They have the great running backs, and they have a plethora of them that can run the football. So, and again, they can throw it too, but it's definitely a run-heavy offense. They much prefer running the football, JMU, and boy, they have been able to do that throughout the course of the season. Again, very much like Jacksonville State, where they're so heavily skewed to the run. 6th in rushing attempts, 111 in pass attempts per game this season. All right, next up, we've got the AAC championship game. This is pretty much a play into the playoff. You win this game, you're probably in the college football playoff. North Texas and Tulane. We've got North Texas 2.5-point favorites, 66.5 the total. By the way, Troy James Madison is at James Madison's home field in Harrisonburg, Virginia, and there are no weather issues. This game is at Yulman Stadium, of course. Tulane getting to play this game at home. New Orleans. And this game has a chance for some rain. 70% chance of rain here in New Orleans, down in the Bayou on Friday night. Of course, John Summerall, we talked about it. Florida Gators, the new head coach, he will be there. But he is sticking around to coach at least this AAC championship game here against North Texas. So that's good news, obviously, for the Green Wave. You look at this matchup, North Texas is obviously one hell of an offense. We know that. They're scoring 50s for the most part in every game other than the game they played against Navy, and that's probably because it was a low possession game. Navy plays so bloody slow, you don't often have enough possessions to be able to score 50 points. But really outside of that, this North Texas offense, especially through the air, has been absolutely lethal. What would concern me here for Tulane's defense is there is a noticeable gap between how good their run defense is and how suspect their pass defense is. And I don't know if that plays very well against North Texas with Mestamaker, who's obviously done a great job throwing the ball. A North Texas offense that is averaging 325.7 passing yards per game. Now, they are balanced. They do run it a little bit, but they do throw it, a little bit more than run it. But there is a big-time difference. Tulane's good against the run, but they're giving up, 250 per game through the air. Opposing quarterbacks have, completions of 22.9 against them. That's 132 in the country. They're giving up 67.1% completion rate to opposing quarterbacks on average this year. That's ranked 125 in the country for Tulane's defense. So right away, the matchup screams this is not a great matchup for Tulane because the weakness is their pass defense, and that's clearly what North Texas does very well is just throw the football all over the field. On the flip side here, you've got the Tulane Green Wave offense, which is definitely a lot more balanced. They have, 66 pass attempts, 64th rush attempts. They want to be balanced. They've got a run game that's pretty capable. They've got a quarterback in Jake Retzloff, the BCU transfer, or the BYU, I should say, transfer that, he can throw it. He's got mobility. He can run with the football as well. They've got McClure and Gordon, the two running backs as well that can carry the rock for this team. When you look at the North Texas defense early in the year, I thought, wow, the North Texas defense, they're really playing some good football, playing well. But, later on in the season, we saw their numbers get worse. And just in the last 3 games alone, North Texas is allowing 219 rushing yards per game at 5.3 yards per carry. We've seen their pass defense numbers get a little bit worse, not better. Even though their pass defense has been very good for the season, the pass defense numbers did slide a little bit. So this is another one where it's very hard when you look at the stats, when you look at the way these two teams are trending as far as offense is concerned and the matchup head-to-head. It's hard to bet over, or under, I should say here. But it is a high total. We'll see if it's too high. It wasn't too high in the first meeting. These teams played way back in October at North Texas. Tulane was victorious, 45-37, 82 points in that game. And both teams had their share of offensive success. So, again, this is another game where I want to bet over, but there is some rain in the forecast. I'm going to wait later in the week, see if the forecast clears up. From a side perspective, it's tough because, Tulane beat them in the first meeting, but the way North Texas is rolling, and I find with Tulane.
They played this year?
They did at North Texas.
Really?
Well, that was last year. I'm getting the date wrong.
Okay.
Last year. And
I missed that. Okay.
Right. They did not play this year. That's last year's game where they had 82 points. But, yeah, I'm interested in the over. I think North Texas just has a better matchup here. But Tulane at home, Tulane is an underdog. I'm not sure I'm going to fully get there with North Texas. This could be another deal where if I bet North Texas, I'd prefer the team total. Don't have to sweat the spread. Just get the points that I think they should get. So I'd probably prefer the team total route if I end up on the mean green. C-Mac, what do you think here in the AAC championship?
Shout out to everyone in the chat. Appreciate you guys. FB, my man. Appreciate the love. Andrew, as always. Woo, woo, woo. Kenny, woo. Great to see you, my dude. Ross Pitts, Chosen. What up, what up? Collins Clips. What up, my dude? I agree with both those. I think, even though they play again, I don't know if BYU is going to score much on this Texas Tech defense. That's looked really good.
We'll get to
Yeah,
that.
we're going to get to that. Yeah, there's a little bit of rain. I don't know if this stops these offenses. To me, maybe that's keeping this total where it's at. Like this, to me, should be 3 points higher, I think. But it's a championship game. I think you got to look at it like that. North Texas just been covering machine. It's kind of like, why is this 2.5? Like, I think it's making, if you like North Texas, just jump on it. I think you're right. If you really like them, take the team total in this game. And Tulane's defense, has looked pretty good. I mean, when these teams play such kind of, Charlotte, Temple the last few weeks kind of changed the numbers. That's why you got to go week by week, and the whole year is a little bit tough. Nestamaker is really, really good. That bad game he had in the second half at South Florida, how many picks did he have in that game? Right? That was earlier in the year?
They
lost
that's the game I'm thinking
at home.
of. Yeah, South Florida, that big Friday night game. That was the South Florida game. Yeah, that was the game where North Texas lost 63-36. Nestamaker had 3 interceptions to go with his 2 touchdowns. Yeah.
Yeah, if he's clean, though, I think it's good. But that was kind of like the only, that second half of that game was a little bit shocking. So, and you know what's been the difference with North Texas is the defense, is a lot better, I think. And that's why these teams, even people have been on them, even cashing with them, as good as the offense is, at least this defense is improved. It's going to be tough to get spots. Like, I don't know how North Texas still will stop the run. Like, I think Tulane still will be able to move the ball plenty. This game's a good one. And then some are all going to Florida. How do you take that in? We just talked about with Chesney at James Madison. So should be fun. Lots of fireworks in this game, I think.
All right, our last game for Friday night is Mountain West Championship action, UNLV and Boise State. Boise State 3.5-point favorites, 57.5 the total in this game. A lot of moving parts here. Let me start with this. There is potential that Maddox Madsen returns from injury for Boise. They've been holding him out the last few weeks. They've been going with the backup, Max Cutforth, who's been the quarterback the last few weeks for Boise. And, yeah, he has struggled for the most part. This has definitely been a huge downgrade with the way he's played. He struggled against Fresno.
Came up big when it mattered, though.
A little bit better against San Diego State. A little bit better. But the point is he's improved every week. And with the game on the line last week against Utah State, his overall completion rate was not great. 26 of 49, 53% completions, but he did throw for 341. And more importantly, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And when the game was on the line, he got them into range to get that, or he got them down the field for that touchdown in the last couple minutes of the fourth quarter to take the lead last week against Utah State. And remember, Boise State had to win that game to get in the Mountain West Championship game. And as a result, that comeback win against the Aggies on the road is why they're here. And definitely we've seen some progress from Cutforth. But there's no doubt you want Maddox Madsen. He's still the superior of these quarterbacks. We'll see if he's back. Whoever's a quarterback for Boise, it doesn't change the fact that I still don't fully trust UNLV's run defense. And I remember the earlier meeting in Boise with these two teams during the regular season, and the run game was just they ran wild, literally, on UNLV's run defense. And I know there's a UNLV defense that's looked better down the stretch. They really have. We were all shocked. We were blown away by what they did against Hawaii at home 2 weeks ago. But Hawaii doesn't run the football. First of all, they can't run the football. They don't run the football. They don't try to run the football, Timmy Chang's team. They're a very pass-heavy offense. So UNLV's leaky run defense was really spared against Hawaii because Hawaii just doesn't run the football all that much. Nevada's just not a very good team, or they haven't been a great offense all year. So how much do you put stock in what UNLV did against Nevada's offense last week? I know they are playing better. You can't deny that, UNLV's defense, but I'm still not there when it comes to trusting them to stop the run on the road in the cold here on a Friday night in Boise against a team that can really run the football. And just like I said earlier in the regular season meeting, it was just a demolition for Boise running the football against this UNLV run defense. However, if Cutforth plays, I have a hard time laying more than a field goal, with Boise State, with him considering, he's still a work in progress. This is a Boise team that, look, they're 1-3 against the spread their last 4 games. They won 2 of those games. Colorado State, throw it out. They were a disaster down the stretch. Throw it out that they won that game 49-21, but they were down all game against Utah State and rallied for a 1-point win. So I still don't know if I'm excited about laying more than a field goal if Max Cutforth is going to be the quarterback. That being said, do I want to take UNLV if I'm worried about the run defense giving up 294 yards on the ground to Boise State again, like they did earlier in the season? So here's where I'm at. If Madsen's in, I like the over in this game, and probably Boise. If Cutforth is in, they might still run the football with success. I'd probably still lean over, but if Cutforth's in, I might have a little bit more interest in a revenge spot taking more than a field goal with UNLV. That's kind of where I'm at right now. We'll see where Boise State's at later in the week and if Madsen's able to return at the quarterback spot or not. One thing I will say, though, is UNLV's offense is dangerous. And we saw Bryson Barnes and Utah State move the football against Boise's defense last week. Calandria is playing at a very high level. Hell, this UNLV offense is playing at a very high level right now. And it should pose some problems for Boise because Boise's defense, I would say it hasn't been locked down here down the stretch, especially when they've played some better offensive teams. What do you think here in this one, C-Mac? Very intriguing game in the Mountain West Championship.
Yeah, it's a weight on the quarterback. I don't think Maddox Madsen is going to play. Maybe he is. That it's healed up enough.
Spencer Danielson, the head coach, said he didn't close the door on Maddox being ready.
Really?
But
again,
it's questionable right now.
UNLV's been. You talk about Boise State and earlier in the year. I mean, UNLV just goes to Boise and loses. It's just again and again all the time.
A minute ago, regardless of who the quarterback is, can you guarantee UNLV can stop the run? I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, but UNLV, I think, is going to be able to run the football on Boise. There was some mistakes made in that game. I think Boise had almost 300. UNLV had like 260. But they got down so quick in that game. It was over. They couldn't get any stops.
The third quarter did them in. That third quarter was abysmal for UNLV against Boise, and that's where it got away from them.
First 3, I think, were all bad for them. I don't think the defense. We got to give the credit. We talked about it, but it was the Hawaii team we talked about struggled in a big spot and had struggled in Vegas again and again at times. And I think it was just that big Friday night. These big Friday night games. UNLV came to play. Place is rocking. It's a little bit different, and that'll be here. I just this is a wait. This line's moved too. Right? A little bit. 3.5 now.
Yeah, 3.5. It blew through the key number of 3. It was actually 1.5 and went up to 3.5 and now 4s. I'm actually seeing 4s now as we speak. So money.
Calandria has got to be really good. He has the weapons. He's played excellent.
There's no doubt. If you like Boise in this game, bet it now. Bet it soon.
Yeah. For sure. This is just a wait for injuries, the whole thing for me.
All right, let's go to Saturday. We've got the Big 12 Championship, BYU, Texas Tech. Texas Tech 13.5-point favorites, 50 the total in this game. I mentioned James Madison, 0 interest stepping in their way. I'm going to mention it now with Texas Tech. 0 interest. 0 interest getting in front of this Texas Tech team. Doesn't mean I'm going to lay it with Texas Tech, but there's no chance I have a BYU ticket in my pocket here in this game. You look at this, and they already showed what they could do against BYU back in November, 29-7 in favor of Texas Tech in that game. They're pretty much in control throughout. Got off to a bit of a slow start in the first half, but then they poured it on in the second half and just basically controlled the line of scrimmage throughout. Texas Tech was able to pile up, 149 rushing yards on the ground, 219 through the air. Pretty good balance with Baron Morton at quarterback. They did a good job, limiting L.J. Martin on the ground for BYU. The Chase Roberts had one touchdown reception from Bear Bachmeier in that game, but still, like I said, it's definitely been a Texas Tech defense that did a pretty good job keeping the clamps down there on that BYU offense. One thing that's interesting is Kalani Sitake Mushrooms. He decided, I'm going to rest some guys last week. They were still able to win and still able to cover despite a slow start against UCF last week, 41-21. But like I said, I worry, about how that offense is going to be. And does that throw off the rhythm that you had some guys out, of that game last week against UCF, knowing that they were trying to get, some of their starters some rest here for the Big 12 championship game. But like I said, I'll keep it simple here. This is the favorite or pass for me. I just have zero interest in betting against and Texas Tech getting in their way. All 5 of their wins on this 5-game win streak since their loss to Arizona State have been covers as well. 5-0 straight up, 5-0 against the spread. They already have a 22-point win against BYU just a few weeks ago. That 48-9 against UCF, 49-0 against West Virginia last week. I mean, they're drilling teams right now. So hard to step in front of the Red Raiders. CMAC, Big 12 championship. And this game, by the way, Jerry's World, as it always is, AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, home of the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I think that's a little bit. It's just BYU, the team that's won on the road all year. This is the biggest for Texas Tech. I mean, this team hasn't seen a defense like this. I can't remember. They'd have to win in shootouts. And all 3 levels are good with this defense. I mean, they stuffed the run. The line, the secondary is pretty good as well. Of course, they got, what's his name? Rodriguez, the linebacker. That's really, really good. I think they're 3rd or 4th in sacks. They get to the quarterback in all of college football. So, yeah, this is just the second time around a little bit. Can BYU make the adjustments? These are the games, too. You got to throw the kitchen sink a little bit. Trick plays. I mean, where it's just your offense, especially if you can't move the football at times, you might have to do that.
Get some gadget plays with that Parker Kingston guy, because that guy in base is very dynamic. That's what I'd be looking to do if I'm BYU, because you got to trick it up here in a game like this to give yourself the best chance against a defense like this.
For sure. I mean, BYU is just, it was just tough. I mean, they ran it 27 times for just 67 yards, which is about what Texas Tech gives up, to people. Just right around there, 67 yards a game. So Bachmeier's tough. Maybe the BYU defense is going to have to make some plays here. Flip the field, stuff like that. This Texas Tech offense. So, yeah, I know it's tough in this game. Have BYU get over 17.5 points. That's right. I don't know. But second time around. Should be fun.
Yeah, this is one where I don't know if I love BYU under or Texas Tech over their team totals. If I like Tech, I would just maybe go with the number 13.5, because I could see this being 30 to 16, 30 to 16, 30 to 13, something like that. 31 to 16. It could be that kind of game. I think it could be BYU. I don't think Texas Tech is going to completely annihilate them, but I still think they could win by at least 2 touchdowns. I have no interest in fading them. They've been the class of the Big 12 start to finish season.
Can they push them around like they did? BYU tries to do that for the most part against all these other teams.
Yep.
Of course, with their 26-year-old grown men on their offensive line and defensive line. But they couldn't do that first time around.
All right. MAC Championship, Ford Field in Detroit, where this game is always played every year. Miami, Ohio, Western Michigan. Western Michigan, 2.5 point home favorites, 43.5 the total here in this game. Obviously, you look at Miami, they win their last 2 games against Ball State and Miami. Pretty solid victories there for them in both of those games. We'll see how they fare here in the Mountain West Championship game. Now, here's the conundrum with Miami. They made the right decision, by the way. They put Henry Hessen in there against Toledo. The guy was absolutely brutal. And then they made a switch a couple weeks ago before the Buffalo game to the freshman, Thomas Gutkowski, at quarterback. And this guy's playing well, in 2 games for Miami O. Very, very impressed with what I've seen here. 4 touchdowns, no interceptions from him in the 2 games. He's not lighting it up as far as completion rate's concerned, but he's made no mistakes. He's moving the ball when he has to, relying on a Miami O team that has been able to run the football these last 2 weeks against Ball State last week in that 45-24 victory, 232 on the ground for Miami. Here's the issue, though. This quarterback for Miami, he's probably going to have to do a little bit more with his arm this time around, Gutkowski, because when you look at this matchup against Western Michigan, that is an excellent run defense that Western Michigan has. It's one of the strengths of the team. They just stop the run. And if Miami can't run the football and there's more placed on the shoulders and the arm of Thomas Gutkowski, is he going to be able to lead this team through the air in the passing game if their run game is shut down, which is certainly a better chance of that happening this week against Western Michigan than it was against Ball State. We're talking about the best defense and the best run defense in the MAC, Western Michigan. So that would be my one concern here. And it's really bothering me because I kind of want to take Miami O catching points. We like Chuck Martin in the underdog role. We like Miami catching points, more often than not. Do we fully trust Western Michigan's offense? Even though they have scored the last couple weeks against Northern Illinois and Eastern Michigan, 35 and 31 points. And we've talked about Brock Lowry. There's no question about it. Brock Lowry's gotten better later in the season, but it's still not one of your more dynamic, explosive offenses by any stretch of the imagination. And this is a guy that the last 2 weeks, even in those victories, he's at 55 and 50% completions in those games. Western Michigan's still a team, that has to have some success running the football. And Miami O's very good against the run. So you've got both of these teams wanting to run, both of these teams very good at stopping the run. Which quarterback's going to have more success? Got Gutkowski for Miami or Lowry for Western Michigan? That's what it comes down to. But I don't think either team's going to be able to run the football very easily. And I like Chuck Martin as a dog. I lean Miami O a little bit here. Even though Western Michigan has been, I would say, from top to bottom, the most consistent team in the MAC this season, you also can't sleep on the fact that this Miami O team is back in a game where they got slaughtered last year. They got absolutely ambushed, annihilated by Ohio in the MAC title game last year. Miami O lost 38-3 last year to Ohio in the MAC championship game. So to get back here, knowing that this team got absolutely throttled last year in the MAC championship game, that's an element of this game that I considered in my mind with Miami here and why I'm leaning to the Red Hawks. You don't want to get back to this championship game 2 years in a row and lose it again. And I think the chip on their shoulder after getting just blown out and just embarrassed by Ohio last year in the MAC championship game might fuel them here on Saturday. C-Mac, what do you think here for the MAC?
Yeah, this is a little bit revenge for Western Michigan. That was earlier in the year, October, where they lost. Of course, Finn was at quarterback. That game, Miami, Ohio scored, 17 in the fourth.
Here's where I'm at in this game. But to mention it's, the two teams are going to have a hard time running it. This is going to come down to the end, probably. And who's going to make the screw up? Who's going to make the mistake at quarterback? Is it going to be Lowry for Western Michigan, or is it going to be Gutkowski here for Miami, Ohio? It's likely going to come down to that.
Yeah, for sure. When I see this, I think under in this game.
Could be.
With these two defenses. It's weird because it could just be that slow game, and sometimes I've talked about this all the time with the MAC. It just kind of the games break out, tackling's horrible, and we get a lot of points, a lot of mistakes, shit like that, and turnovers, which could happen. Yeah, I think Miami, Ohio is the play. Just a little bit different team. I think it was good they got rid of Finn's out of there. And by the way, I think, just to touch on the last game, I think he plays. It's just, will he be effective? And against that defense, Chase Roberts, that left for BYU. I think he'll be able to go. That's why I took him out. He's been dealing with that, but I think he at least plays in that one. But this one, two teams running the football, smash mouth. Lean the side, I got to take the points, even though this is a little bit of revenge. I know it's revenge from them losing in this game last year, championship. But Western Michigan, I'm sure, remembers that. Just 6 weeks ago, that they blew the fourth quarter against this team and lost. So.
Great point by our guy here. I agree. Like, you look at it, DeQuan Finn leaves, and Hessen was bad. Maybe they were shook in that first game against Toledo. They played like it, the first game after he left. But 2 games since then, they look like they've found themselves again. They've rallied around, let's finish this season strong. They won their last 2 games to get into this MAC championship.
Well, they got a good football coach.
And they got a good coach.
Chuck
Martin.
So that, I
the
think
Chuck
Wagon,
I like to call him. Chuck Wagon, like the old, like the rodeo thing. The Chuck Wagon races, the Chuck Wagon.
Chuck Wagon.
He's been a wagon as a dog, I'll tell you that, in his career.
I know, so. I'm tempted here with him already, going through this game.
Yeah, it's Miami O-lean for me. I probably will have at least some kind of bet on them here. All right, SEC championship game. This is, of course, is always in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta, home of the Falcons. Georgia Bulldogs, Alabama Crimson Tide. Georgia 2.5-point favorites, 47.5 the total in this game. I know I like Kalen DeBoer normally in big games, but I got to admit, this is a side I like. I like Georgia here. They lost to Alabama in the regular season meeting. They had that slow start, and then they made their adjustments, and Ty Simpson struggled in the second half, but Georgia just couldn't quite get over the hump in that game. Opportunities, and there was a key possession late in that game where they were in the red zone. They got stopped, on 4th down, but Georgia made their adjustments, and that Alabama offense had a much harder time moving the football in the second half. And I continue to see Alabama, like even in the Auburn game, that was not an easy win for them against Auburn. They obviously had the loss to Oklahoma. They just barely got through South Carolina and Missouri, in road or games away from Tuscaloosa this year. The one thing I would say, though, is while I like Georgia money line, which you can get -135, -140, if you like Alabama, take them early. We know Georgia's had this propensity for slow starts. Hell, it happened again against Georgia Tech, where Georgia Tech gets the 3-0 lead, and it takes Georgia, a little bit of time to get themselves into the game. So what I would say is if you have any interest in Alabama, the first quarter might be the best way to bet them, knowing Georgia's had some slow starts. But I think when you look at it, too, with this Alabama team, they've still had some struggles as far as the run game is concerned. Now, they finally got it going a little bit against Auburn, and they've also had some injuries there at the running back position, in that Jam Miller's been banged up. They had to rely more on Daniel Hill. We know the passing game, Simpson's capable. He's got Ryan Williams. He's got Jeremy Bernard in that great tandem at receiver for Alabama. But like I said, I think Georgia here, losing the previous meeting. Kirby Smart knows his way around, these SEC championship games. He's been in so many of them here over the years with Georgia. I like them at less than a field goal here in this game to get the job done. I think Alabama's safe, even if they lose this game, especially if they lose this game in a competitive manner. Like if they lose by a field goal or by 7 points, they're still in the playoff probably, in my opinion. I don't know if they'll get jumped. They'd certainly guarantee they're in the playoff if they win this game, but I still think there's probably a good chance they're in it, even with a loss. Yeah, for me, at anything less than a field goal, I like Georgia here. I still think Georgia's the better team as well. C-Mac, what do you think?
If you like Georgia, I want to. Maybe you want to split your bet up. Why take them pre-game? Their struggles early. I wouldn't even put any money. I would just take them live.
Yep.
I think Alabama.
That's my plan, actually. I should point out, I bet Georgia pre-game, but that's just like a quarter unit because I plan to add more if they fall behind. Knowing that they had early struggles, early and slow starts in games. Yeah.
Even though this has been dominated by Alabama, these games are close. So I think people thinking you're getting under a field goal is value with Georgia. I think this game is close. I wasn't impressed with Georgia. I haven't been really. They were at home. They beat Texas. The defense, was good. Of course, Charlotte, to just go through the motions. And last week, that was You want to talk about an ugly football game? Yeah. You watched some of that game?
Yes, it was. Very
Yeah. Shit. Stockton, I don't know, he threw for 50 yards
Yep.
In that game. I think Alabama is going to have some success here in this game. They just know each other so well. It's going to be big to see the adjustments that are made throughout this game. Especially if Georgia gets down, then that's where I'd look to take him. Like as him as a favorite, I just don't want him at all. I know this is revenge, but I've seen this before. In these games, I think the defenses are better. I always bring it up every year when you get these teams together on this turf. Big plays will be made, right? It just goes over the number. Like, I just think it's what happens here. I know the first game was 24-21. I think we get a little more points, in this game. And I think it can creep over. It's just a little bit too low. That's pretty good defense. Yeah, Alabama last week, lucky. But that's what happens, Get the fumble, end up winning it. So they had a big drive. There were some flags. That was, always a good Iron Bowl, always classic, especially when it's at Auburn. It was really, really good. So, yeah, I like the over here. And I think if you like Georgia, just wait in this game. This should be good.
Yeah, normally I bet I know long term over the years, like the Big 12 championship's been a big over game. The SEC championship's been a big over game over the years. Historically, the trend has been over in the Big 12, over in the SEC championship game. A lot of the SEC championship games over the years have gone over. So that alone at 47.5, I could only lean over. I look, the problem
is the offense going to stay stalled.
Both offenses are slow. This ain't the old Kalen DeBoer Washington offenses. They play very slow now. Alabama on offense, and I had over 46.5 with in the Iron Bowl, and holy shit, just won it by a half a point. I'll take it. But boy, oh boy, that's what I'm worried about. 27-20, and it falls like half point short because neither team's going to push pace. Both teams are going to be deliberate. But like I said, it's a strong history of overs in the SEC championship game. Way more of the SEC title games than not have gone over the total here in recent years. So keep that in mind. All right, we got 2 games left. Next up, we've got the ACC championship, Duke and Virginia. It is Virginia 3.5 point home favorites, or 3.5 point favorites, 57.5 the total. This game on a neutral field at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, home of the Carolina Panthers. That's where this game is every year. It's hard to believe Duke found their way into the ACC championship game, but because of all the tiebreaker scenarios that broke right for them, they are here in this ACC championship game. Like I said, if Duke were to beat Virginia, James Madison and some other group of 5 team could be the beneficiary, or some other power conference team that's on the bubble of the playoff could actually get in as well. So that's what could happen if Duke were to emerge, because Duke is not likely going to get in as an ACC champion to the playoffs. There's too many bad losses. Like the UConn loss is going to keep them out. That there's just no way. That even if Duke wins the ACC championship, that they're going to be in the college football playoff. Virginia would be in the playoff if they win this ACC championship game, but not Duke. So that's why if Duke wins, it is going to cause chaos, as our guy in the chat, Mr. Kidd, says. So, yeah, I totally. I mean, if you're any of these teams that are on the fringe of the playoff right now, you're actually rooting like hell, in this scenario here for, Duke to cause some carnage here in this game and maybe open up a spot for you. But nevertheless, will they be able to is the question. One thing's for sure about Duke is they still can't stop anybody on defense. It's still a problem. Now, against Wake Forest, they still struggled on defense, but their offense with Darian Mensah and company came alive. And boy, oh boy, to do that against a pretty good Wake Forest defense, I got to admit, I was very impressed. And we know Duke has been carried this season, without a doubt, by their offense. But, 49 points in that game against Wake Forest. They had 378 total yards. Now, they gave up 342 through the air and 126 on the ground, but they benefited big time from Wake Forest mistakes, Wake Forest turnovers, 3 lost fumbles for Wake Forest in that game against Duke. So keep that in mind. And Duke was certainly able to capitalize on those, even though Wake Forest still had the edge as far as outgaining Duke in that victory. But it matters not when you put the ball on the turf as many times as Wake did with those fumbles. So be careful of reading too much into Duke. Be careful of looking at that as too much of a positive for Duke. That victory, because Wake made a lot of mistakes in that game, and the Duke defense still struggled. I don't know how they stopped Chandler Morris. They certainly didn't stop Chandler Morris and the Virginia offense when they played during the regular season, as it was 34-17 Virginia back on November 15th when they played. And that game was at Duke, too. Like, that was Virginia going to Duke and putting a number on them. As far as their offense, Morris had 316 through the air, and if not for 2 interceptions, it probably could have been worse. Jamari Taylor and Harrison Whaley, they ended up combining for a solid day on the ground as well, including 2 rushing touchdowns. The money's come in early on Virginia. They see that the offense dominated this Duke defense. This Duke defense still struggling to get stops right now. It's hard to argue with it. It really is, because Virginia. Now, I do worry about coming off the big emotional win of playing a rival like Virginia Tech last week. Is there a bit of an emotional hangover for Virginia in this game? But I don't know if that's enough for me to want to trust Duke, and especially Duke's defense, to stop them. So Virginia team total, I already bet it. I like it. I probably like that more than the 3.5, because you just never know, right? Duke's offense, when it's on, it can move the football. It can put up points in bunches. And so there's always that possibility, they're down by 9 points, in the fourth quarter, and they get a backdoor touchdown and cover the number. So, like I said, for Virginia, I prefer the team total for them in this game. You can find that right now currently at 29.5, 30.5 with the Virginia team total. I do think they get into the 30s here, because everybody's getting into the 30s for the most part here against Duke's defense. I mean, the numbers have been dreadful. They give up 32 to Wake, 34 to Virginia, 37 to UConn, 45 to Clemson. They only gave up 25 to North Carolina, but North Carolina's offense has been bad all year. It struggled to move the football and put up points all year. That's the only team lately that Duke has held below 30 points. So I don't see them keeping Virginia below that 30 mark. C-Mac, what do you think here? ACC title, Duke, Virginia.
Yeah, I agree. I think their team total, I think, get the 3. Just to be safe, I think they cover this number, even though this is I know Duke. The one thing is, Duke's played them. You talked about that game. There was all dominated by Virginia. Time of possession, throwing it. They just dominated Duke in that game with 540 yards. So I think they remember it. The team just can't stop anyone. Virginia has a defense. This team is pretty good. Duke has a pretty good offense. Can they get into 20, keep this game close? And I think the only thing is, hey, we're here. We're dogs. We got nothing to lose. You know how this rolls in these games. We see it again.
Oh, Virginia's got to win if they want to make the playoff. They're not getting in without an ACC championship. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's why I'm hoping there's no emotional hangover from the Virginia Tech game. You want the playoff, you got to win this. There should be a hangover. You got to be focused, ready to rock here.
Yeah, Duke shouldn't be able – I don't think they'll be able to run the ball much. This run defense is pretty good with Virginia. And their pass defense is pretty good. But Duke's got to throw it. Right? You got to think that that's just where their bread and butter is with 290 a game. So can they make some big plays to keep it close? I don't know. But I know their defense is bad. So I think Virginia scores on them plenty.
All right, Big Ten championship game to wrap it up for this edition of Hitting the Books. Indiana, Ohio State. This is, of course, in Indianapolis, Lucas Oil Stadium, as it always is, home of the Indianapolis Colts for the Big Ten championship. Ohio State, 5.5-point favorites, 48.5 the total here in this game. Ohio State has been, the eye test tells you they're great, both sides of the ball. You've got Julian Sayin, You've got Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, two big-time weapons at receiver. You've got the best defense, it looks like, from what we've seen all season in the country. And Matt Patricia, we've talked about this before. We've given him a lot of slings and arrows in the past. Whether especially in his NFL tour of duty, especially with the Lions as a head coach, where it just was a disaster there. But we got to give him his flowers when he's doing coaching well. Just like we criticize when he's not doing well, got to give him, props and homage when he is coaching well. And he's done a phenomenal job with this defense. There's no denying that whatsoever. This has been a dominant defense. All the numbers bear that out for Ohio State this season. So it's certainly not going to be easy for Indiana to move the football either on the ground or through the air. You're talking about a team that's first in the country in yards per play allowed, 3.8, which is incredible. 3.8 yards per play. It's all they've allowed Ohio State's defense. Third in the country in rushing yards per game allowed, 2.8 yards per carry allowed, sixth in the country. Passing yards per game allowed, 121.3. I think what's impressive about the secondary and only giving up 121 passing yards per game, first in the country, is the fact a lot of teams have been trailing Ohio State late in games. They have to be throwing the football a lot. And still, you're giving up just 121 passing yards per game, especially when Ohio State's been leading big in every game in the second half. And yet these teams still can't, put up passing yards against this Ohio State secondary. So, but I keep coming back to it with Ohio State. While everything looks phenomenal, it's not an easy team to bet against. The schedule. You have to go all the way back, really, to Texas, first week of the season, to find a truly impressive victory that Ohio State's had against anybody worth a damn. Is that Texas game? Maybe the Washington game's kind of nice looking, with
decent,
decent win there. Penn State was supposed to be a big win, but they've had a disappointing season, obviously. And then there's nothing else on the schedule that says, wow, what a great win. Michigan hasn't been anywhere close to where they've been in the past. So there's that element of, we haven't exactly been facing a murderer's row schedule, and when they haven't. That's the bottom line here. So then you have to factor in, is Indiana ready to step up, ready to compete? And their schedule is pretty damn weak too. But you could make a really good argument that the single best win in the regular season for either of these two teams was when Indiana went to Eugene, Oregon, and beat Oregon on the road outright. That's pretty damn impressive, considering what we've seen here from Oregon throughout the course of the season.
Impressive. That game was 2020. They kind of dominated the last 6 minutes. They got a touchdown and a field goal during that game.
No doubt. Yeah, fourth quarter, it was, and what's amazing about that game? It was 20-13 Indiana. They controlled the flow. Roman Hemby, was able to do enough running the football. Mendoza was very, very solid with 215 through the air. They had the lead. But then Mendoza throws a pick six to tie the game 2020 early in the fourth quarter, and he rebounds. He goes right down the field after that, finds Elijah Surratt, the great receiver for Indiana, to take the lead 27-20, and then they add to it with the field goal. I want to take Indiana here, quite honestly. If you're Ohio State, you finally beat Michigan last week. That's been a fucking thorn in your side for a couple of years now, that you haven't been able to beat Michigan. And you remember last year when they made that run to the national championship game and winning the title. They came off that Michigan game. They had like a team meeting, Ryan Day and the players and Will Howard, who was the quarterback last year. And it was almost like a coming to Jesus moment for Ohio State. We got to get our shit together. We got to put that Michigan loss behind us. Everything is still in front of us, because at the time when they lost to Michigan last year, everyone was saying, oh, this team stinks. They're not going to do anything in the playoff. Losing to Michigan again, same old Ohio State. And then they galvanized together as a team, and they went on that big-time run where they destroyed Oregon in the Rose Bowl. They went on that run in the playoff, and they won the championship. And just, they got hot in the playoffs and won every game and won the title. This year, it's different. They finally beat Michigan. Ultra satisfying after the Wolverines had beaten them multiple years in a row. Is this kind of look, and they're already in the playoff. To make no mistake about it, this is not a big deal if Ohio State loses this game at all. Neither of these teams really, because Ohio State's in the playoff and still, one of the top seeds. If they probably still get a bye. to the quarterfinal, even if they lose this game, Ohio State. I think for Indiana, there's a little extra incentive for them here because Indiana's never won a Big Ten championship. So this is like history making for Kurt Signetti, Fernando Mendoza, and everyone on this Indiana Hoosiers team if they win this Big Ten championship game. Ohio State will want to win the game, but they won't lose sleep if they lose it. For Indiana, I think there's that extra. This is a chance for us to make some fucking Indiana Hoosiers football history, guys. Let's try to take the advantage of it. I'm leaning to the Hoosiers here with the points. C-Mac, what do you think here? Big Ten.
I think if you like Indiana, I'd take them early. Just because off the big win with Ohio State.
Good point.
At times, this is the best defense. These are two of the best
second half team too, especially the
very good.
Weeks. Let's keep that in mind. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it all year. This is the best defense in the country. When I look at this game, what I want to bet on is the under. The first half under 24.5. There's a little bit juice, just 23.5. Minus 104. So the 24.5, if you get right around it, probably minus 120. I had to look for it. I'm going to lean on that. These defenses. Also, Indiana's team total. I see a bunch of 20.5. I don't know. I want the 21.5. It's just been money. Even with Michigan, they score it's just the second half, they shut it down. It's just the strength of schedule. People got to love Ohio State too. Just rolling ATS. Man, this is a team that just not only the numbers have been covered this year. This is definitely will be the best offense they've seen. Can they do anything with it? Mendoza, I like him. He can make some mistakes. I think he does. In this game, the Oregon win, like you talked about, was huge. I mean, Indiana's defense, I think, is for real as well. You go through these numbers; these teams are at the top of everything. Like you just kind of like turnover, and you go through all the stats defensively. That's what leads me to the under. It's just, I think this could be just a rock fight that could be difficult to see points and a good one. Could this be a good one? Ohio State has consistently beat the living shit out of Indiana year in and year out. Remember last year, of course, Indiana a lot better, the crazy year that they have. And I think they lose 38-15, right?
Yep.
That game?
Yep.
So, big brother, little brother, a little bit
I think you convinced me to go first half full game split if I take Indiana. At least split it between first half and full game because I remember last year in that 38
first quarters,
Ohio State win. That was a 7-point game at halftime with Indiana and Ohio State in Columbus, and then it got away from Indiana in the second half. And Ohio State outscored them 24-8 in the second half of that game last year. So, yeah, I mean, I think Indiana's. Like I said, I think for Indiana, this is. By the way, because this game's in Indianapolis, obviously, look. Buckeye fans are going to travel. There's going to be tons of Ohio State fans in the crowd, but they're not going to dominate this stadium with their crowd like they have in the past because obviously this is an in-state game for the Hoosiers. So you're going to get the Hoosier faithful there at Lucas Oil Stadium with this being in Indianapolis, Indiana. So this is not going to be quite the same dominant home field edge that Ohio State often can have here in the Big Ten championship game. So keep that in mind as well. But yeah, very intriguing game.
I think early would be it.
Yeah.
If you like first quarter, first half, maybe just punch him in the mouth. Ohio State.
Yeah, should be good. Oh, excited to see. And yeah, I think Dram Yankee, whoever wins this game, probably is your Heisman Trophy winner. It feels like we're at the point now where it's down to Mendoza and Sayin for the Heisman. Certainly, if you believe in the odds board right now for the Heisman Trophy futures, they're the top two right now. Mendoza and Sayin. So it makes sense that whoever's going to win this Big Ten championship game is probably going to win it.
Yeah.
The winning quarterback. Yeah.
You might be right. I mean, both have been so good this year, Yeah.
Good game. Gus will be screaming his lungs out. That'll be tough to take. But other than that, it'll be a fun watch on Saturday. Because it is on Fox with Klatt and Gusser on Saturday. All right, good stuff. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button. We appreciate it very much. That's a wrap for this edition of the show. We will be back. Date to be announced. We're either going to be on next Monday or the following Monday with our first
Yes.
bowl preview show.
Following Monday.
Probably the following Monday. Yeah, to the 15th.
Yeah, no show tomorrow. Next week. No show.
Okay, that's good. That's fine. Yeah, we'll do Monday, December 15 and Monday, December 22 with our two bowl preview shows, as well as the playoff games as well. So, like I said, we're excited about it. C-Mac, anything to add before we wrap it up?
No, I think you nailed it. Shout out to everyone in the chat. Shout out to all the members for our shows. We appreciate you very, very much. And everyone else, just hit the like button. You talked about we'll be back 2 weeks to go bowling, right? Go through all those games and everything that gets involved with it. Championship week, you can't beat it, right? Doesn't get bigger than these games. I'm pumped. So that's it. Let's get out of here.
Great stuff.
Get this man rested.
Yep, no doubt. Thanks to everyone for tuning in. Hit the like button on the way out. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Enjoy Conference Championship Week in college football, and good luck. We'll be back tomorrow, by the way, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific with the college basketball hitting the book show. We got a bunch of SEC, ACC challenge games tomorrow night. SEC teams facing ACC teams. So that'll be going on, and we'll preview the card for tomorrow in college basketball. So join us then Tuesday, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, and we'll be back in 2 weeks, Monday, December 15th, with our next edition of the College Football Hitting the Book Show, Bowl Preview Part 1 in 2 weeks. Make sure you join us for that. Until then, class dismissed.